So welcome everyone to Après Midi, and I'm very pleased to introduce Edith de Belleville, who is on my left, and she's going to talk about Jewish Paris. She is an expert on this subject, but this is not the only chapeau that Edith wears. I have a long list of, you see everything that is starred here. So she is an expert of the Jewish heritage of Paris. She is a licensed tour guide. You know, there's a lot of tour guides out there that are not licensed. She is licensed. She's also a licensed attorney in France. And she is an FLE, a FLE teacher of French. And she's the author of 2 books. And she has a new one in the works, right? You have 2 books, but you have another one in the works. Is this the one with Lisa Anselmo?
Yes.
Okay, in coordination with Lisa Anselmo. And on that note, I think Edith is going to talk about the Jews of Paris.
Yes, I will try.
But you're going to tell us a little bit more about yourself, right?
Yes,
because she is French, by the way. Shocking.
Okay, hello. Thank you. So, hello everybody. So yes, I have to introduce myself first because I know, you know, in France you never introduce yourself when you do a lecture. Never. No.
Really?
Yeah, no. Because you have to be humble and you're not here to hear about myself, but to hear about what I'm going to talk. But I'm going to introduce a bit, just to tell you the link I have with the Jewish heritage in Paris. Yes, so I did university work as a mediator about mediation, about the restitution of works of art looted from Jews in the Second World War. So this is something I'm very interested in. And I don't know if you know, but have you seen the movie A Woman in Gold?
Yes.
So I did this work, it's not me, but I did about Maître Erskovich, that we were together at the law school in Paris. She's kind of friend of mine. She is the equivalent, like exactly the movie, but it's French. You know, you have the German lawyer, the American lawyer. So it's her who did the looted art from the Jews from France. She did sue le Louvre and she won. I mean, incredible story. So I wanted to write about her, what she did. So that's why my university work, but she, you know, she's the expert. Her nickname is Madame Restitution, because everybody know that when she's arrived, you have to give back everything looted from the Jews in France. So she's a great lawyer. And what else? I do guided visit in French about Jewish heritage for a French cultural center. So if you speak French, I encourage you to come to the visit. It's I do once a month, everything about Jews and Paris. So I did last week the Jewish artist at the opera, and I did about the Jewish people from Ile Saint-Louis. So that's the thing I do. Then I used to teach the Jewish heritage for the future licensed tour guide, but I stopped because they forgot to pay me. So I ended. Well, no, they wanted to pay me, but it was too complicated, so okay, I gave up. Anyway, and the next slide, please. And just, I don't know if you, to talk about Jewish heritage, when we talk about France, we think about the Dreyfus affair, if you heard about it. I won't talk about it because it's a bit complicated, but if you're interested, it's the book, according to me, the best book written about Jean-Denis Bredin. Is the first one who wrote about the Dreyfus affair in the 80s, and he became a member of French Academy, that's the man, and he was my law teacher, great teacher at my university, Panthéon-Sorbonne, when I was a law student. And I don't know if you know Robert Badinter. Have you heard about him? Robert Badinter was a minister of justice. He was Jewish. His father was deported. He was an orphan. He was involved in the Shoah Memorial. And today they do a special event for him at Invalides, because he was really worshipped by the French. It's him who suppressed the death penalty in France when he was Minister of Justice. So that's him. You see what it's written, Macron rend hommage à Robin Badinter, and this is him on the wall of the name, the Shoah Memorial. And I wanted to say a few words because he was also my teacher. I was lucky enough to have him as a teacher, law teacher. And today, you know, and he said, you see, I'm a Minister of Justice. So I wanted to say a few words about him. As we say in Yiddish, a mensch, a mensch. This is what he was.
Does everyone know what that means? Good.
Mensch. A good man, you know. Voilà.
Or woman. A woman can be a mensch.
Don't know. All right, so that's it. Enough to talk about myself. So the next one, please, is about. Please.
Oh, the next one.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
next one.
Sorry.
Voilà. Alors, just to talk again about myself. So you aware that Belleville is not my real name, of course. Huh? My real name is Schmuckler with 2 Z, 1 K, Ashkenaz. Then my grandfather came from Poland. And it's funny because he was working at Carreau du Temple, which is just here. He was a tailor, and they were living Rue Béranger, which is next, and not far from République. So I just wanted to show you how it used to be before Carreau du Temple, which is just here. Voilà, that's it. Enough about myself. Now, the next one. Thank you.
Sorry.
The next slide, please. Sorry. Voilà. Alors, the problem was Jewish heritage. It's a big subject. You know, you have from Middle Ages and the Dreyfus affair. You have many, and the Shoah. I didn't want to talk about Shoah, not because it's not interesting, because everybody talks about it. So I wanted to talk about something that we talk less. And in fact, the subject about Jews in France are the Jews from 18th century, before the French Revolution. I wanted to know what happened because there were not so many in France. So that's what I'm going to talk about, if you agree, even if you don't agree, anyway, because this is what I prefer all evening. Being a Jew, alors I say being a Jew in Paris, not being a Parisian Jew, I will tell you why, in the Enlightenment time. And the museum, if you're interested, it's the Musée Cognac-Gers, Rue Elsevier, which is the museum dedicated to 18th century. But there's nothing about the Jews, but it's interesting about 18th century. Alors, why I wrote in French? Because in 18th century, so I put 1750, so the time of Louis XV until 1789, so beginning of the French Revolution, so Louis XV, Louis XVI, so 2 kings. And I wrote in French because in 18th century the language in Europe was not English at all. It was French. As I always say, English was like a bit Dutch now, you know. Nobody spoke English, was not useful. So that's, you know, that's, I wanted to, that you're aware that French was really the language. For example, you know, Casanova, he wrote his memoir in French. He didn't write in Italian because he knew more people would read his book. Yeah? So, voilà. So this is the museum, and this is a painting I like on Greuze, children, 18th century. Voilà. And the next slide, please. Alors, the Jews in France. Before coming to Paris, you have to know the different communities in France in 18th century. So there are 3 kinds of communities of Jews in France in 18th century. How many Jews? There are 14,000 all over France, which is not a lot if you compare with the number of Jews in Germany. You see 170,000 in Germany and 175,000 in the Austrian-Hungary Empire. So there are not many Jews in France. So the biggest community is Alsace-Lorraine. So I put you a map that you can see on east of France. You see Lorraine, Alsace, near Germany. And Alsace did belong to Germany. Lorraine was an independent duchy. It was a bit complicated, but 80% of Jews in France belong to Alsace-Lorraine. So you have Strasbourg and Nancy, which is Lorraine. But the 2 communities were different. The Jews from Alsace were the poorest. They were extremely poor. They were not living in the city. They were not allowed to go to Strasbourg. And the Jews from Nancy, well, Lorraine, were a bit more wealthier. Because, so I put you the date because it's a bit complicated. In 1648, Westphalia Treaty, so during the time of Louis XIV, so Alsace is French. And in Metz, the city of Metz, 16th century, it's Henry II who took Metz and who did allow the Jews to live there. So the Jews from Lorraine, Metz, are urban people, and the Jews from Alsace are more countryside and extremely poor. They don't speak French, speak Yiddish, you know, not very integrated. So that's the big community in 18th century. Then the second, you have the aristocracy. You have the Jews we call les Juifs du Pape, because in 14th century the Pope territories were, you see, Avignon, Provence, Vaucluse. So it's Avignon and south that we call the Jews of Pope. They were allowed. And that's why the oldest synagogue of France is in Carpentras, which used the name was Contins Vénésens. That was doesn't exist anymore, and because it were the Jews, the oldest synagogue was.
Is it still the oldest synagogue in France?
Yes, Carpentras. Yes, right. yes, absolutely. I forgot to say, I'm sorry, that in France, maybe you know, it's the third biggest community, Jewish community in the world. The first is Israel, the second
US,
and the third is France. The third in the world, because thanks to the Sephardic Jews who came to France in 1962 with the independence of Algeria. So the Jews mostly, as they were French, they didn't go to Israel, they went directly to France. So that's why, because they were French and they were speaking French. So that's why it's a very big community. Meaning when you Ashkenaz here, you're a minority. That was funny. When I went to the States, I said, I'm not a minority anymore, but here I am. All my friends are all Sephardic. So that's the Jews of the Pope, oldest, 2,000. And then you have the Jews from Atlantic side, Bayonne, Bordeaux, 2,500, and Bayonne, you see Bayonne is near Spain. Alors why Spain? Because in 1492, you know, Isabel the Catholic expelled the Jews, 2 weeks to make prepare the suitcase to leave. So many went in the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, Morocco, all north of Africa, and some came to France because of the border. You see, Irun is in Spain, so Bayonne and Bordeaux, and they stay on the Atlantic side, and that's why they went after to Amsterdam, you know, Rotterdam, so it was always staying near the sea to do the business. So there are that we call the Portuguese, even, so in 1492 expelled from Spain, then 1497 expelled from Portugal.
Plus they could transport by ship, right?
Yes.
That was another reason that they were in the various ports, right?
Plus they were linked with the colonial and slavery and things like this, and that was the well of Bordeaux was extremely rich because of the, you know, the slavery and things like this, but also the business. So they call the Portuguese, even if they're from Spain, that's the name, Portuguese, and call also in Ladino the Spanish from 15th century conversos, because they are converted, or the new Christian, les nouveaux chrétiens. They pretend they are Christian, but in fact they keep the Jewish, you know, religion. So they were protected. So they're Sephardic. You know where the word Sephardic come from? Sephardic. So in Hebrew, to say Spain, it's Sfaradia. So from the Hebrew word Sfaradia, Spain came Sfaradim. So they were protected. So they are the aristocrat of the Jews in France. I mean, they speak French perfectly. They are very integrated. They're well off. You know, they're protected by, again, Henry II, who made a kind of law to protect them, and they're bankers. So that's really aristocracy of the Jews. They are the Jews from Bordeaux, Bayonne, which is interesting because in Bayonne, what they were doing, the Jews, they were the chocolate dealers. as tomorrow is Valentine's Day and maybe you will buy chocolate. So that's the Jews who were dealing the chocolate in Bayonne, but they were not allowed to stay in the city. They had to live outside. And why chocolate? Because you know that the chocolate comes from Spain, Mexico, and with the conquistador from Mexico to Madrid. So they spoke Spanish, they know Spanish, so that's why they were the chocolate dealer, because they have family in Holland, so that's why they were the chocolate dealers. And if you visit Bayonne, there is a chocolate museum. So it's very interesting. If you like chocolate, it's the city to go. Voilà, so that's the community, all right? Voilà, what else I have to say? Yes, alors, meantime in Paris, what happened? In Paris, there were, you see the date, 1182, 1306, 1321, 1394. That's the year where the Jews were expelled. That we call the sponge. They come, they have to pay taxes, they expel, the king take everything, and you can come back, but you have to pay the sponge. So the first king who used this kind of discrimination is Philippe Auguste. Philippe Auguste is the king who made le Louvre. You
and
know
the
that's
wall.
And the wall of Philippe Auguste. And something interesting that when you learn, of course, if you learn French history, we learn Philippe Auguste is a wonderful king, Saint Louis is a wonderful king, but if you see with the Jewish eyes, not so wonderful. That's it. But you have to be aware. So Philippe Auguste is the first king who expels. Then you had all, you see, so you can see they go to Provence, because Provence was not the French kingdom. So that's why they were out. They could stay. Bordeaux was not French. Provence, Pope was not French. So what is interesting about Louis IX, that's Saint Louis, you know, it's the Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. So that's the Saint Louis became a saint. Is the first one who asked, it's the Pope who wanted that the Jews had the yellow will. That he asked all of the kings all over Europe. Some say yes, some say no, and Saint Louis did it in 1269. He asked the Jews to wear the yellow will. So you see the yellow star comes from, unfortunately, from the 13th century. Why yellow? Probably, not sure, probably because in the Bible, you know, Judah, the coin of the money was yellow. So it's the betrayer, the man who betrayed Judah. So as the Jews are seen as the betrayed, so that's why yellow is a very bad color anywhere. You will see few fashion show with yellow. It's not a good color. It's the color of the devil. The prostitute had to wear a yellow belt. So it's not a good color. I'm sorry if you like yellow, but it's not a good color. Alors, what so you see the map. You see Guyenne, it means Bordeaux, England, and Royaume de France. So you see that Avignon doesn't belong. I wanted to show you this just for fun. You see, this is illustration. When we talk about the yellow wheel, well, we always show this illustration. But let's see if you listen to what I say. So I told you Saint Louis, it was 13th century. And this illustration, Grande Chronique de France, they wrote Yellow Wheel 1321. Chronique de France, it's from 14th century. So in 14th century, they made illustration and they say it was in 1321 that the Jews had to wear the wheels. Look, so you see how they make a mistake. I don't know if I'm clear. They wrote in 14th century this, but we call anachronism, because in 1321, it was not in 1321. It was before. It was in 1269. You know? So even this, you have to be careful with illustration. It's an illustration. It's in Tel Aviv in Israel, but it's a wrong illustration. They made a mistake. They did it after, and they made a mistake about the date. It's not 1321. It's before. It's 1269. You see?
How long did it last?
till Saint Louis. After he died, and after there was other kings. Voilà, so that's just to remember what happened. Saint Louis did something so friendly that he burned the Talmud at the Place de l'Hôtel de Ville. He burned, there was a trial about Talmud because he said the Christians say the Jews criticize Jesus in the Talmud, so there was a trial, and Saint Louis, well, he was nice. He didn't burn the Jews. He was nice. It only burned the Talmud. But imagine, it was not printed. Imagine the value of one Talmud because they had to copy.
Does everyone know what the Talmud is? The Torah?
The comments.
The holy scriptures?
It's the comment of the whole Bible, and it's extremely, so not only it's holy, but it was a cost because people had to copy by hand. So that's the two things that Saint Louis did. Voilà, so that's about medieval time. So, voilà, alors. No, you're going to read. Don't read. Let's
go back. Want me to go back?
Yeah,
back.
because I have to explain. You're Jewish and you want to go to Paris in 18th century, so 1750, 1760. You're not allowed it because 1394, it's the last expulsion, and the Jews say, goodbye to France, we won't come back ever. So you don't have Jews. From 1394, you don't have. But in 18th century, some Jews were coming to Paris to do the business. So how they could go? They could go to Paris. They were authorized if they had a passport for 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. So they were. You forgot to ask me how many million of people are French? 28 millions. So 40,000 Jews with 28 millions of French. So you go to Paris, there were only 500 Jews. Not a lot, 500. And how do you have the passport? You have to ask your syndic. You know, like when you real estate. That's the name, syndic. It means you ask the leader of your community, and you have to have a paper that you're honest, that you're not a thief, and they give you a passport. They ask the police, and you can go. And in Paris, you had 5 detectives. They were only dealing about the Jews in Paris. 5 detectives only for 500 Jews. Can you imagine? That was a really, people were paranoid at the time of Louis XV. They had an obsession with the Jews because they say we don't trust them, so we have to. So 5 detectives. So 50% of people didn't have the passport, by the way. If you didn't have the passport, you could go just behind the jail of Temple. That's where you were going. So there were businessmen and from Alsace, from Bordeaux. People from Bordeaux, the Jews, people were more open-minded because they knew they were wealthy. But the Jews from Alsace, it was more difficult. All right? Alors, when we talk about enlightenment, we know the light, the reason, the philosophy. We think about philosophers, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, ideas of freedom. And in the Enlightenment century, 2 philosophers are extremely important in France. It's Voltaire and Rousseau. Voltaire, when there was the terror attack, you had the book of Voltaire everywhere, the Treaty of Tolerance, because Voltaire pleaded for the Protestants, because being a Protestant, it was not as worse as being a Jew, but it was not wonderful either. So Voltaire didn't like church, and he really pleaded for Calas, for the Protestant. So you have on one side Voltaire, and the other side Rousseau. Alors they hate each other. One is very Parisian, Voltaire. The women fainted when they were seeing him. He was a rock star. Women loved him. And Rousseau, he was from Geneva, more Swiss, more, austere, more shy. It's very different. So the question, I was questioning myself, what Voltaire and Rousseau think about the Jews? What they think about it. I wanted to know, what. So you could think Voltaire, as he defended the tolerance, he will say, we have to let the Jews come to Paris and to live their life. This is what you could think. But not at all. Alors, that's the next slide. You're going to see what Voltaire. It's in the Dictionnaire philosophique, so you won't find it because it's censored. If you check letter G, Jews, women, or homosexual, or Muslim, all these people censored. Because if you read after, you will like Voltaire less, believe me. So what did he say? Jews are the most abominable people on earth. So I said Jew, that he defended Calas. Calas was a Protestant who died because he pretended he killed his son who committed suicide, but because he was Protestant, he was in jail and killed. And Tolerance article of the philosophy, perhaps most openly, Jews, with regret that I speak of the Jews. This nation is, as many respects, the most detestable that has ever stained the heart. So it's only too true that the Jews, according to their laws, sacrificed human victims. Voltaire said this, that the Jews sacrificed human victims in 18th century. This act, religion accords with their morals. Their own book depicts them. Okay, my English is not wonderful, so you can read it because reading Voltaire in English for me, it's complicated. So
you want me to read it?
Yes, if you don't mind.
From the beginning?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Jews are the most abominable people on earth. Throughout the same glorious years in which he defended Calas, Protestant, and tolerance. Indeed, it is in the tolerance article of the Philosophical Dictionary that he is perhaps most omenly ignoble. Jews, it is with regret that I speak of the Jews. This nation is, in many respects, the most detestable that has ever stained the earth. So it's only too true that the Jews, according to their laws, sacrificed human victims. This act of religion accords with their morals. Their own books depict them mercilessly slitting the throats of all those they met, and reserving only the daughters for their own use. It is therefore all too true that the Jews, according to their laws, sacrificed human victims. This act of religion accords with their morals, their own books. Wait, it's a repeat, I think.
Yes, it's nice, sorry.
Yes, I think about Rousseau as I think about the Jews. They're madmen, but we mustn't burn them, Voltaire.
Voilà. So you see,
lovely.
Yes, and but you won't find it. So it's in 1968 that Léon Poliakov, who is a historian, who wrote about Voltaire, because we had this idea that he was friendly, not at all. You see, so it's and during the Second World War, they used the French collaborated at Sorbonne University. You had a French teacher of history. French teacher of his French history who used the words of Voltaire at Sorbonne and to make, many people to explain, you see, even Voltaire, he doesn't like the Jews, so he was used by the Nazis, which of course it was not, he say they don't have to be burned, but you see, it's as he was used. So what Rousseau says, so that's the next. Voilà, I say Shabbos Goy, but it's not my idea. Shabbos Goy, Rousseau.
The Shabbos Goy.
Yeah. It's not my idea, unfortunately. So you can.
You want me to read it?
Yes, thank you. Because
the solution advocated was the creation of a Jewish state that would protect its inhabitants from persecution. I will never believe that I have heard the reasons of the Jews until they have a free state, schools and universities where they can speak and argue without risk. Only then will we know what they have to say. The astonishing and truly unique spectacle of an expatriate people who have had neither place nor land for nearly 2,000 years, a people altered, burdened, mingled with foreigners for even longer, a people scattered over the earth, enslaved, persecuted, despised by all nations, yet retaining its customs, its laws, its mores, its patriotic love, and its first social union, when all its ties appear to have been broken. What must be the strength of a legislation capable of working such wonders? In Le Contrat Social, he wrote that the institutions of the Jewish people established under the reign of David and Solomon, despite a hostile environment, have been perpetuated right up to the Christian world. In Rousseau's eyes, this perpetuation is the mark of the Hebrew's political genius. Rousseau once again expresses his admiration for the lawgiver Moses.
You see, he was extremely modern, and Rousseau, that he say about the Jews. What he respects, Rousseau, is the law, and he say the Jews made the law, you know, with Moses. That's why. So that's because we criticize Rousseau, you know, because he had the children, and the children went to the orphanage. So we say he was not a wonderful father, which is true. But you know, sometimes people, you think it's interesting. So this is what the two philosophers. Now, voilà. Alors now we come back to Paris. So I told you passport. So 5 inspectors, as I told you, for 500 Jews.
What year was that? A passport.
70. It starts with Louis XV. So it's mean the 1722, but later, let's say 1750. It's the Berryer was the police lieutenant, and he really didn't like the Jews, so he wrote to Louis XV and he said, we have to control the Jews.
Before the revolution?
Yeah, it was until the French Revolution. Well, before but it really started with Louis XV, that's why I put 1750, even more, but 1750. So what is interesting that you see Paris, it's a left bank and a right bank. And on the right bank, you have the Jews from Alsace and they live in street near where you have Beaubourg now, you know, where Beaubourg now we call La Rue Maubuée, that doesn't exist anymore. So it's there that there was the Jews from Alsace and Lorraine, so east of France, and they were selling jewel seller, hardware store, while you had the non-Jewish. So the Jewish sellers, they were staying with the non-Jewish seller on the same street. And on the left bank, there were more the people from Avignon and Bordeaux. And what is interesting that in the Rue Saint-André-des-Arts, that still exists, it's where you had the Jews from Avignon selling silk. But the Jews from Bordeaux didn't like them because they were, you know what, the same word in English, banqueroute, when you don't have money enough. So the people from Avignon, the businessmen, they were not great businessmen, so they had banqueroute, so they had a bad reputation. So you know, it's always like this. You have 3 Jews and they don't agree. Each one wants to say something different. It's always like this. So imagine with 3 communities. You think they get along? Not at all. The Portuguese,
we have a joke: 2 Jews, 3 opinions.
Exactly. So, so imagine. So the Jews from Portugal say we have nothing to do with these people. We don't like them. They were more protected. The Jews from the Portuguese. So this is it.
Silk.
Silk. Voilà. Alors, something I found, I think it's interesting, that's the archive of the police, because you know the police, they write everything. So it's interesting when you do researches. Okay, I can see anything. So here is the rapport de Bureau. So you had 5 inspectors. 2 were not nice at all. Le Grand, Tapin were really, they didn't like the Jews. Bureau was a bit nicer, if you can say this, nicer, you take picture. Alors, so this is État des Juifs, so rapport de Bureau, inspecteur de police, 13 June, if you want to have the day, you ask Mary, 1755, 2 January 1756, 16 July 1756. And it's all the name of the Jews, so if they have the passport or not, they're all listed.
Wow.
So you have one, for example, is from Spain, because if you come from Spain, you want to do business in Paris. So Manuel de Leon, with a daughter and a son, Salamanca. He lives Rue Mazarine, so we know where is Rue Mazarine, and he makes chocolate. He doesn't have passport, which in French we write passeport. You know, pass in 2 words. But he's a honest man. a lot of consideration, so he doesn't need. 50% of Jews didn't have the passport. Another one, Salomon Benjamin, Amsterdam, tobacco seller. And the judge decided he didn't need passport because he comes from a serf family from Alsace, were extremely well known, well off, and businessmen. They were dealing with tobacco. So he's well off, he doesn't need a passport. What else you have? You have a woman, Rosette, a very few women. Elle donne à manger aux Juifs. It sounds weird to hear. She gives food to the Jews. It's written this. When you read this, it's a bit rude. But she behaved well. Alors, Aaron Samuel Cain, business jewel. He had a passport for 6 months. 6 months, good reputation. Alors, one from Bayonne, Aaron de Castres, silk and chocolate. Léon Ravel d'Avignon, it's interesting the name, business of silk, 6 months. There is one, is not good at all because it was bankruptcy, you say bankruptcy, and he spent more than 6 months au Temple. Au Temple, what is le Temple? The jail. Just behind
right
you.
here. Yeah.
Just right here, it was a jail. Because in the 18th century when you had debt, it was a jail. Always. It was supposed a crime to have debt, yes. So
Boy, Americans would all be in jail.
Voilà.
They live on credit, are you kidding?
Yeah, so here it was not a good thing, you had to remember. So you see, it was interesting, and then moving to realize that it's the street which still exists, where you had Jews who are coming.
Next.
Voilà, yes, please. Alors, there is a movement, Enlightenment movement from Germany. Alors, in German, I can tell. I didn't even written. Just tell in Askala in Hebrew. It's the education enlightenment. That's the concept, to be open-minded, to be near. It's a Jewish movement, but philosophical. That the leader was Moses Mendelssohn. Alors, Moses Mendelssohn is from Berlin and is the grandfather of Mendelssohn, the musician, yes. So he's an intellectual, and he say, okay, we have to keep our religion, but we have to be near the Christian people, more integrated, more open-minded, So it's Enlightenment Jewish movement.
Does that basically mean assimilation?
No, it's
No, enlightenment?
Yes, enlightenment. But it's not assimilation. It's more integration.
Okay.
It's different because they kept the Jewish roots, the Jewish religion, but
to live among the others.
To be modern, to be modern. Voilà. So.
Look, Edith de Tolérance.
Ah non, oui. Alors j'ai écrit. You know what?
What?
I'm so self-centered that I wrote my name instead of Edith without H. Can you imagine? As you say in Freud, a lapsus. A lapsus. I'm a low.
Okay.
No, you don't have H. What a shame.
It's Edith.
No, it's not Edith that's my name. No, Edith, Edith.
Edith. Okay.
I'm sorry. I feel so shame of myself. Voilà, c'est Edith de Versailles. You see? Alors, L'édit de Versailles, what is it? So we think that the Jews had the citizenship in France with the French Revolution. It's not true. They had before, in 1787 with Louis XVI, before the French Revolution. So that we call Edit de Versailles, Edit de Tolérance, which is a law made for the Protestant and the Jews. Because, Lafayette, of course. I have to stand up or I can stay like this?
What's better if you stand up?
Okay.
We hear you better.
Okay. So Lafayette, he went to America with Washington. And he came back and he said to Louis XVI, Majesty, the Protestants, they couldn't get, when they were married, they didn't have, the paper from the city hall because they didn't exist. So he said, you know, it's a bit tacky. You know, in America, the Protestants have the same rights. So Louis XVI said, yes, you're right, it's not very modern. So he said, okay, Lafayette, you're going to make the Edith Tolérance for the Protestants. So it's Lafayette who inspired. And Louis XVI said to Malesherbes, who was a judge and a lawyer, a magistrate, Malesherbes, he said, vous vous occuperez des Juifs. You will deal with the Jews. So it's Malesherbes. I put you the name Boulevard Malesherbes, because this is him. He met Mendelssohn. No, Mirabeau, not him, but Mirabeau met Mendelssohn. Mirabeau is an important man. He met Mendelssohn. So Malesherbes also was inspired by Mendelssohn, and it's Malesherbes who made Edith de Tolérance. Alors, this is not Edith de Tolérance, it was before, but just you can see that you have the word written Juif, 1784. It was the Jews from Alsace, they had to pay taxes. When you had a cow or sheep or animal and you want to go in Alsace, you have to pay tax. And the Jew is like an animal, so had to pay tax, yes. So it was really humiliated, that tax of the Jews. So they decided to end this. That's this law, 1784. Exemption du droit de péage corporel pour les Juifs, meaning body taxes. You imagine, because a cow, a sheep, a pork was the same
And a
as
Jew.
So he said, no, it's not modern. This movement was before in Austria, you know, Joseph II, who was the brother-in-law of Louis XVI, because he's the brother of Marie Antoinette. He did before in 1781. So he was also Louis XVI, probably inspired by his brother-in-law, who made tolerance law for the Jews. So that's why it's important to know that this tolerance law existed before the French Revolution. And I put you a picture of a Cerber. I told you about him, very important man. If you visit the Jewish Museum in Paris, you will see his portrait. He was an intellectual, philanthropic, a businessman from Alsace. He did a lot. He did a lot for the tolerance for the Jews. Voilà. And the next one. Alors, again, a speech. I like speech. Because when you read, I can see it, Adrian. That's why I put so many words.
Okay, you want me to read it?
So I'm going to explain first. Arrived the French Revolution. 1789, July, la Bastille, and you have the debate about the Jews. You think, well, it will be easy, the French Revolution, liberté, égalité, fraternité. Easy they have. Not at all. 2 years. So you had first a debate, 3 days, about the Jews at the Assemblée Constituante, which was the Senate Assembly. And the people who did plead for the Jews were l'Abbé Grégoire, who was coming from east of France, from Lorraine. And this is your homework. If you want to read in English, you see I found you a book, Abbé Grégoire and the French Revolution. That's a great man. He was really open-minded. It's him who pleaded for the Jews. There were few deputies. So he was a deputy, l'Abbé Grégoire, during the French Revolution. So he pleaded.
He has a street in the 6th, right?
Yes. It's because he was living here, and he was also for the black people. He made l'association l'Ami des Noirs, the friend of the black people. So he was against slavery, for the Jews. He was really, really open-minded, a good man. So Abbé Grégoire and Mirabeau. Alors Mirabeau, I put you the bridge. If you know Le Pont Mirabeau, it's a very famous poem of Apollinaire. So Mirabeau was influenced by Mendelssohn because he met Mendelssohn, Moses. So they were for the Jews, but they were a minority. Most of the deputies, especially deputies from Alsace, Lorraine, were against to give the same right to the Jews. They didn't want. The Jews from Portugal didn't want. They said, for us, yes, but not for them. So the Jews from Portugal had almost 2 years before 1791, they had the same rights. You see, they were different. And Robespierre. And when you think, alors first the sentence extremely important is what Clermont-Tonnerre said. I will tell it because it's short. The Jews should be denied everything as a nation and given everything as individual. This is Clermont-Tonnerre. What does it mean? As individual, no. But as they integrate in France, yes, they have the same rights, you see. It's a very famous quote that all the French Jews know. Plus, Robespierre. Alors Robespierre, he has a problem of his self-branding because he doesn't have a good image. You know, he's the man who killed, you know, the terror, not a cool man, but he admired Rousseau a lot, Robespierre. And Robespierre did a speech for the Jews, the vote of the Jews and the vote of the comedians. So it was, and he wrote this. And now, Adrian, thank you. If you can please read.
He said, "You have been told things about the Jews that are infinitely exaggerated and often contrary to history. How can they be compared with the persecutions they have suffered among different peoples? On the contrary, these are national crimes that we must atone for by restoring to them the imprescriptible human rights that no human power could deprive them of. Vices and prejudices are still imputed to them, and the spirit of sect and interest exaggerates them. But to whom can we impute them if not to our own injustices? Having excluded them from all honors, even from the rights of public esteem, we have left them only the objects of lucrative speculation. Let us return them to happiness, to the homeland, to virtue, by restoring to them the dignity of men and citizens. Let us remember that it can never be political, whatever one may say, to condemn to degradation and oppression in a multitude of men who live among us."
You see, it's very modern, huh? When we so at the end, after 2 years, you know, 27 September 71, for the first time in Europe, the Jews had the same rights. So it means they could buy land that they couldn't go. They could be bankers. They could do anything. So that's why after, many Jews from Germany, the Rothschild, the Offenbach, the musician from Germany came to Paris. Because they had, that's why you had a big, or Camondo from Turkey came. Voilà, and the next one, please. Voilà, but that's it. Voilà, just one time. That's my publicity, my book. Nothing to do with the... I don't speak about Napoleon because it's 1806 and it's 19th century. So just to know that Napoleon was not wonderful with Jews. That people think he was great, he was not so great. But that's another story. Voilà. Thank you. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, questions, Q&A.
I have a question that's sort of broader a little bit about writers today and historians. In the U.S., we have this wonderful woman named Heather Cox Richardson, and she writes about current events through the filter of our history in the U.S. And I'm curious, being fairly new here, year and a half, I'd like to learn more about what's going on in current events, but I'd like it to be tied to history. And so that's what I'm looking for
J'ai rien
from
compris.
anybody.
I did not understand.
Tu n'as
sorry.
pas compris?
No, just what you mean, the Jewish history in France?
It could
If
be,
the
it could
historian have the Jewish lens, that's it?
She's looking, okay, let me, if I can
Yes.
paraphrase. I think she's looking for someone or something that writes about the current events related to the Jews.
What is current?
Current events, the things that are
now.
happening now,
Okay.
right?
not just Jews.
No, but just in general, but know how to relate it back to the history. That actually use the historical reference in order to describe what's happening today.
The question is, first I say, if you speak French, you will find many books in French. But
Yeah, in French.
So Heather Cox Richardson writes a daily letter to it's called Letter to an American. And everything that happens on a daily, not everything, she picks salient things about what's happened throughout 24-hour period. And
She's
she
pretty
paints
amazing.
a picture of how that relates to history in some way.
Right. She's pretty amazing.
She's extraordinary. She's amazing. She's historian.
Yeah.
Sometimes she just
So the
writes
question
down
is if we have equivalent.
This is a blogger, basically. Okay, it's a
We have
blogger who
equivalents.
writes an incredible essay every single day.
Okay,
that's-
so I have to read it.
Yeah.
up on Sunday. That's it. Right? You talking about Heather Cox?
It's only once. It's once a week.
No, it's every day.
Every
On
day.
Sunday she'll say,
She takes Sunday off.
I'm taking
Oh,
it
she
off.
takes Sunday off.
She just started recording something for the
Oh, wow.
But what is the link with what I said? I don't understand, sorry.
It's just about trying to understand what's going on today and how it relates to the past, like you just did.
Okay.
So I have
But-
like just add on to that. Like
Yeah.
let's say with Le Pen like rising, is there fear like through the Jewish lens with Le Pen?
Ah, oh la la. You know, I shouldn't say I record. I was on the law school with her.
Oh.
Yeah, it was same. Yeah.
We didn't hear you.
I was with Marine Le Pen at the law school.
Just let it.
Yeah, I never talked to her. She wouldn't have liked me anyway. So the question is, what you wanted to know about the Jewish community now?
From the Heather Cox Richardson, Salatras, like Le Men, like en France, like through a Jewish lens with today's news and the political powers, like what from the past
Like the
history
anti-immigrant
can also inform us today. And I just picked out from my observations Le Pen.
Mm.
She's scary.
She's scary. Yeah, she scares me. Yeah, but.
She's ahead in the
But given
polls.
Jewish history.
Yes, of course. I mean,
So,
it's a problem, but well, now it's politics, and I don't want to talk about
Okay.
politics. I'm sorry, it's too. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Edith, I have a question about the yellow wheel that
You all speak louder.
Yes, and our
will.
microphones have to pick up your questions, so we have to repeat the questions so that we hear it.
Yes. Okay.
So my question is about the yellow wheel that you said was a kind of badge that had to wear. It looked like on the sash that he was wearing. But it looked like, when I was trying to follow the time period, this is something that began in the 13th century and continued for 100 years into the 14th century. Is that correct?
Yes, until they left. And
Until
after
they
left
Until they were
1394, expelled.
Right,
Yeah,
I see. They didn't just leave.
Yeah. No, they didn't leave.
But
They
it
were
was
expelled.
really a long period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't
Yes,
know.
and in Germany they had to wear, even in France, the hat to be ridiculous. You can see if you Google on the internet, you have the Jews from Germany. They had ridiculous hat, but when you read more about the Jews, for example, in Normandy, in Rouen, you have the feeling that they didn't wear the yellow wheel and they were living close to the Christian. They found a new house in Rouen and they discovered it was in the center of Rouen, so it means that they were near to the Christian. So it goes and come back, depends of the king, and it's very subtle. That's something that depends where and.
So we're still battling anti-Semitism today.
In France, it's very, very, very. I mean, I know in US, but in France, it's extremely scary. 1,000% raising now at school, especially at school. This is where you have the most anti-Semitism in France at school. 12 years old kids. Yeah, it's very scary. Yes.
I'm constantly being asked about it.
Yes. Yes.
I took a course here in Paris on art history, and the professor said the Louvre, she was very proud that the Louvre was doing everything they could to return works.
Okay, so.
She said particularly.
Alors, they did an effort. It's true. They did 2 years ago. They was online. You could see how they were showing where the painting comes from. They opened. It's true. They did an effort. But and I would like to write a book about this. If you read on a legal, as a lawyer, no. I sum up. That's my point of view. I don't want. I talk for myself. When the painting, like you had in Orsay Museum, there was a Klimt painting coming, and they realized it was looted because it did belong. It was Nazi who took it. So the French, you had the photographer, you had the people, they give back. But when it's the French, when it's the Louvre who looted the art, you go to the Court of Appeal because they say no. You see the difference? When it's the Nazi, no problem, it's not us, we have to give, wow, it's wonderful. But when it's us, no, this is what I wrote. This is what Maître Herskovitch, we agree for this. She sued the Louvre now. She lost, and now it's Court of Appeal. I don't know if you heard about the Gurlitt collection. It's collections they found in Germany by a Nazi, and they discovered it was many paintings was looted from the Jews. So what I think it was in Austria, Germany, Austria, they made a big exhibition and they said to the people, if it belongs to you, tell us, we will give you back. And there was an art historian, very famous, now she works for the Louvre. It was a detective story. She found a collection who did belong to a French lawyer. So, and they realized few paintings did belong to the Louvre. And the Louvre said no. So, Corinne Herskovitch had to sue the Louvre. She lost, I think, and now it's Court of Appeal. Because after the Second World War, de Gaulle made a law which is exceptional. It means if a painting, many buyers, and you realize that it was sold by a Jew during the Second World War, as they sold it for nothing, the buyer you have to give back, even if if you have on good faith. I paid. It's not my fault. You have to give back. So it's normally in law you never do this because it's how to say retroactive. You cannot do this. Otherwise, the contract you don't have security. But for this, it works. It's the Ordonnance de 1945 and it's de Gaulle. And what is interesting that Maître Herskovitch told me, she said, I found a law I was watching, and I find this law. And I did sue, and it was painting from Pissarro, Musée de Troyes, et au Louvre. She said, hey, look, did you know this law? Because the museum said, we bought it, we gave money, we didn't know, so it belongs to us. The trial say yes, belong to us. And Court of Appeal, the law apply, you have to give back.
Wow.
Yeah, woman in gold, I say in the beginning, because I say the lawyer, she's the equivalent. Huh? But she all alone. Huh? Yeah, she's all alone. Huh? She's very brave. Voilà.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question about, you were talking about Bayonne and Bordeaux, and so that was mainly Jews from Spain and Portugal, is that right? So then they were in conflict, so they were Sephardic, is that right? And they were in conflict with the Ashkenazis?
Ashkenazi and the Jews, I mean, not in conflict. Well, the Ashkenazi, yes, conflict, really. They really didn't want to have the same right than them. You know, it's always when you have a privilege, you don't want your neighbors are the same. So, yes, they were in conflict, yes. Because they say they don't speak French, they speak Yiddish, they're weird, they're very religious, they're all in black. Look at us, we look like, 18th century elegant people. So, yes, they didn't like, they were not, there was no solidarity.
Question: Are there any buildings or structures that date back to the early Jewish community in Paris? Places where they worshipped or lived?
The oldest buildings date back to 14th century here. The three houses that are in conflict for being the oldest on Rue Volta, François Miron, and Montmorency are 14th century.
of the Jewish community?
No, they're
Oh,
just.
yeah, no,
It's
so
just
there
that the
wouldn't be any yet, 'cause there just isn't that much left.
Yeah, because those are the three oldest houses that I know of, and they're 14th century.
So what are the oldest known structures that could be associated with the Jewish community itself?
In Paris?
Yeah, in Paris.
Alors,
Like
I
even if
would
it's the 18th or 17th, 18th.
My building is 17th century, and it was definitely filled with Jews.
I would say you have to,
I can tell you that. Well, I happen. There are some people in the building that are still part of one of the original families that owns quite a lot of property in the building. But I heard a story from someone who stayed with me in my apartment once, who had a cousin come in to visit her, and her cousin recognized it as their cousin's apartment. She was a dentist, and he saw patients in my living room. But this doesn't go that far back. It's it's 20th century.
But in the 11th century, you had a Jewish cemetery on Rue Galande.
yes, it was the you have a plaque, and they found a grave, and you can see the grave in the Jewish Museum. It's where you have the grave, the medieval grave of the Jewish community on the left bank. No, the Jews were here with the Romans. It's old community.
We were before the Romans.
Yeah, but
I mean, let's really get real here, okay?
in Paris, they arrived with the Roman, but they left and they. Voilà.
Hillary.
When when was created the Jewish community around the Rue des Rosiers? How old is that?
It's more 19th century.
19th century.
With the pogrom in Russia, in Kishinev in 1903. So the Jews. I always say the rich Jews were going to America, and the poor they were walking to France, to Europe. So Rue des Rosiers, it's more 19th century. Because you don't have the concept of ghetto in France. I mean, it's not like in Italy. It's not legal. The Jews were living here because it was more convenient, because you had the mikveh, the bath, you had the kosher butcher, you had, that's why they were living here, and they could speak Yiddish, but it was not a ghetto where they had to live there. It was more convenient.
Because I thought they had to live outside the city wall that was begun by Philip Augustus.
Yeah, but I speak about, she asked me Rue des Rosiers. Yeah.
From your perspective, now in current times, is there still a lack of unity between the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi community? It's more unified now.
Yeah, no, it's no. Now even the Jews from Alsace, they like the change. Now they speak French. The Jews from Alsace, they learn how to speak French. Dreyfus was a Jew from Alsace.
He was Alsatian.
Alliance Française, I have to make publicity. Alliance Française.
Why not do it?
I can?
Of course.
Okay, I didn't want to.
This is the perfect place to publicize
Okay,
this.
thank you. Yeah, no, Saturday evening, there is a talk on the Fédération Alliance Française of USA, a free talk about a book, hello, written by
Janet Hallstrand.
Janet Hallstrand, I can't tell.
Demystifying the French.
Yes. So if you're interested, so I'm the guest. Voilà.
So it's a webinar sponsored by the Alliance Française Federation of the USA.
In
English, with Janet Hallstrand, author of Demystifying the French, and with Edith.
I'm the guest.
And it's at 8 o'clock our time. And if you just go to the Alliance Française Federation website, which is AFUSA, and you can just register. It's free to any. It's free to any of my readers. So you can just it's free to my readers.
Using the email address.
All you have to do is go there and say you're a guest of Adrian Leeds, and then it's fine. Saturday. This coming Saturday. That's right.
At 8 a.m. or
8 p.m.
2 p.m. American, but
8 p.m.
But for us, it's 8.
Edith, I'm going to write about this in tomorrow. I'm going to put a link to the report about this in tomorrow's Nouvelle Lettre, and I will run a link to that so that you can sign up for it. Okay?
Is it in person or online? Is it in person or online?
Webinar.
ST.
Yeah, it's a webinar. Yeah.
I'm right.
Oh, I see.
No, it's 8 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
in the evening. C'est Saturday.
Well, you can
8
always
in the evening.
you can always go online to find it.
Yeah. I can tell.
Yeah, it's advertised for people.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
It's
Well,
8 in the evening.
they do it at They do it at 8 o'clock so that we universally from West Coast to here we can all participate. I have a very general question for you. Why do you think anti-Semitism even exists?
How long do you have? You know what
Yeah,
I
it's a big
say
question.
to my son? There is something that everywhere in the world, people don't fight. I say, sorry, it's a bit vulgar. I say to my son, c'est la connerie.
C'est la connerie.
La connerie. How do you say it in English? That people are
It's bullshit.
everywhere in the world. That's people don't fight. You can find everywhere.
But I think it's also regional. I was raised in an area of Southern California where we didn't have any Jews. I mean, it was a community, and we had a lot of Mexicans, a lot of whites, and that. But I don't remember one Jewish kid in our high school or school.
Not anymore. I mean, in San Diego? Are you kidding?
No, but I'm talking about smaller areas. I mean,
Okay.
if you're raised in schools where there aren't any, I wasn't raised in any. I didn't hear any anti-Semitism when I went to college.
Well, because a lot of us didn't advertise that we're Jewish.
Yes.
If you didn't know someone was Jewish, you tend not to be anti-Semitic.
Excuse me,
And also because there was the same way there was redlining for black people, there was redlining for Jews. There were no
Well,
Jews
that was
allowed.
true.
No, but there was no Jews allowed outside the major cities, basically. So if you lived in the suburbs, no.
I grew up in upstate New York, in the Borscht Belt.
But yeah,
Okay?
that's
And
Jewish.
Okay, and it's all Jewish, and there was no anti-Semitism there. And I was a minority in my school. And I'm very happy the Jewish community took control of the school board. Because a few townships above in Delaware County, the education was deplorable compared to Sullivan County and Rockland. But I was a minority actually.
Okay, so you just actually hit the nail on the head, because this is a question I have asked myself many, many times. Okay? Just because we're talking about centuries ago. Why has this existed for so many centuries?
I have an answer. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Good.
So
I have another answer, but I want to hear yours.
I forgot to say. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So the concept of anti-Semitism, it's from 19th century. It's anachronism to use it before, because before we call anti-Judaism, which is the Jews because of the Christ and the Bible. That's the answer. That's why anti-Semitism is really the political concept born in Germany in 19th century. It's really a political idea. That's why using the word, yes. But if you ask about anti-Judaism in Europe, because of the Jesus, the Christ, that the people who didn't, that's the reason that they didn't want to.
I have a different idea about that. Although I could certainly see, because there were these two sides. There were the followers of Christ, and then there were the others, the Jews. I've always felt that because in the Jewish religion, the tradition is to stop and spend a day studying. And that day you study is also the day you question everything. Nothing. It's not about following someone else's rules or opinions. The idea is to question. That's what the Torah is all about. Mm-hmm. And therefore, because education is so important, they tend to be more intelligent. No, seriously, education is the key. And because of this ability to, really just all, I mean, you have to live by your wits, right? I mean, somehow the Jews have managed to survive all of this through their wits. And so I've always felt that that's really the number one reason that this has been a problem, because the Jews are just smarter.
But don't you think, I mean, to tie things to what's happening now in the U.S. with, let's say, anti-Mexican immigrants coming from the South, conspiracy theories also played a huge role in the history of anti-Jewishness.
Yes.
That's
and I think that is equally
medieval myths. This is just my personal opinion, but it seems to me that discrimination of any group is not when it's a minority, but when it's a minority that's approaching a majority, and they're getting bigger and more important and going to stop us from doing something. And that's when we don't like somebody, is when they're becoming threatening.
If you live in France, there is a very good documentary on Arte.
Yes, I've seen it.
About history of anti-Semitism. It's excellent. You have in German and in French, because you know Arte is German and French. It's excellent. They explain everything. It's
but it's not always on Arte. They put it on for 4 months and then they take it off.
no, it's you can see it now on the replay.
It's running right now.
Yes. Arte, the channel Arte, l'antisémitisme, the history, l'histoire de l'antisémitisme. They took out, and it was back after the 7th October.
Okay.
It should be available non-stop.
It is
everywhere,
now. It is
translated
now.
to English.
It is now. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. If you go back to Shakespeare, you know, Venice, Shylock, etc. Okay, now where does that come from? Is this money lending? That was 16th century.
No, because you know the Christians were not allowed to ask. Thank you. Interest. So what the Jews could, because of the religion. That's why the same phenomenon with the Protestants. If you read Max Weber, the sociologist, 19th century, he say why the Protestants they have less taboo with the money, so you have more Protestants who are bankers. So it comes from this.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's it. That's why.
Is there anything you'd like to add before we? We've got plenty of time. We got plenty of time. It's 4:30. Everyone is welcome to stay as long as you like.
That I'm writing a book about Jewish women.
Jewish women?
Yeah.
From what perspective?
Alors, it's in French. It's the Jewish female artist in Paris in the Roaring 20s. That's the next book. The book I'm writing.
Jewish women.
Artists.
Oh, that you're working on now.
Yeah, I'm working on that. But the other one has worked on a Paris Café book. Nothing to do with Jewish.
This one, Parisian Life.
No, that's my Paris
that's
memoir.
the other one.
No, that's my book in the Paris
okay,
memoir.
okay. And if Edith,
Upstate New York right now,
it's getting rowdy in here.
God is a fight between the progressive Jews and the Hasids. And they have come to upstate New York, and they have taken over the property, and they are not offering any services to the community. And you cannot be a mayor of New York City or a governor of New York City without the Hasidic bloc behind you right now.
Oh, they're so important, is what you're saying.
Big.
They're so big.
Not
The
that they're
Hasidic
important,
bloc?
but they're in their own world, excuse me.
Oh yeah, of course.
They're totally in their own world. And they don't, and what they do is they tie up the tax rolls. They don't contribute to any of the tax rolls. Because their homes are temples. And if you're a male, you're considered a rabbi, and you don't pay tax on the profit.
Well, what is the question?
There was no question.
No, it's just interesting how it's evolving.
Yeah, but there's a basis for anti-Semitism right there. As
Exactly.
far as the active person is concerned, you know.
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu is creating a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism at the moment.
He's been sowing evil all by himself for a long time.
Exactly. Any other questions?
Me, if I have
Anyone? Do you have
question?
anything you want to say? Do you have anything you want to say before you say so long? You want to add anything before we
No, I want
No.
to say thank you.
In that case, thank you. Thank you, Edith. Listen to her webinar on Saturday. Look her up for her books.
My website.
Your website, there it is, the website, pariswithedith.com. And I will have a report on the website as of tomorrow. Okay? Pay for your, you can stay as long as you like. Yes, pay for your drinks.
Pay your drinks.
Thank you, Edith.
C'est très jouissant.